Like, I just don't want people to get pregnant. I want them to have a healthy baby at the end,
Yes.
right? So,
oh, that's so good. Hey there, welcome to Evolving Ageless. This is the enlightened woman's antidote to aging, and I am Michelle Dreilich, your host, and I am on a mission to change the way we age. And so each week I'm joined by experts in their fields, clinical, beauty, you name it, where we talk about all the latest and greatest research and findings on helping us really truly live an ageless life. Today's show is really exciting. It is all about hope. That's how I like to couch it. I'm joined today by Dr. Elizabeth Cherevaty. Hi, Dr. Liz. How are you?
hi, Michelle. Very well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. This is such a great topic because I know that there are women out there in the audience who are struggling still with infertility, or perhaps really just decided later in life that they really want to try to have children. And so today's talk is all about fertility at 40 and beyond. And Dr. Liz is quite the expert in this space. She's a naturopathic physician, and she's developed her own system called the Well-Conceived Fertility Method. And so this program that she's created is completely evidence-based, where she works with women and couples to help them naturally enhance their fertility and really achieve their dreams of having a child. And so she also, recognizing, and we always talk about this empowerment for women, recognizing that women have so much to contribute in the world and are so important and powerful, that she is the founder of this Femme-Powered Global, which is a community around this entire topic of women remaining powerful and feminine and creative and having it all. So I'm super excited. All right, I don't want to delay anymore. I know you're waiting, and there's so many great things to talk about. So let's start with, what are the most common reasons that women find themselves in their 40s looking to conceive?
Oh, that's such a great question, Michelle. I think that there are many reasons, and some of them are that women have developed their careers, they have gained education, they have invested in their future, in themselves, especially through those aspects, and also people are in relationships and navigating, really finding the right partner, really being empowered in their partnerships and in their relationships, and not settling, or removing themselves from relationships that aren't working, and choosing to either go into motherhood as a single woman, or to wait till that ideal partner is actually there and not settling for sort of what she doesn't really want, but that she thinks she should anymore. I think those are factors too. I think that sometimes women just don't know that they necessarily want children until a certain point in their lives, and then they do, and that's okay too.
I love it. I agree. Everyone in the audience has heard me probably talk about this before, but I struggled personally with infertility. I would say from the time I was 31 is when my husband and I started trying, up until I conceived my last child at 38. So, I wasn't 40, but I was sure close enough. And for me, it was an incredible experience and so fulfilling. And so, but for me, it was a struggle, right? And what I love in the way you approach this is that I wish I had known you then, right? Because for me, it started at 31, and it was a constant struggle, like thinking living month to month, living, going to baby showers all the time, or playing with people's kids. And those are all beautiful things. But when you're not having success at conception, they become emotional things. And so let's talk a little bit about the encouragement and the hope and the whole concept of your program, because I think it's so wonderful.
Yeah, the reason why I think hope is such a great theme for today's talk is that there are very good reasons that are supported by actual studies and actual patient outcomes and human outcomes that demonstrate that fertility is actually a dynamic it's a dynamic thing. So being diagnosed with infertility isn't a forever diagnosis. And it's almost like a diagnosis of exclusion. It's just a state. It's just a state of physiology. And it means that whenever I hear that a person's been diagnosed with infertility, I'm like, okay, why? Why are they infertile? Because fertility is a function of our health. It's normal to be fertile in those years of our lives, especially for women. Like men have much longer fertility lifespan. But we know that it's normal to be fertile from our teens to our 40s. And there are even women that have conceived naturally in their late 40s and early 50s.
Right.
And had healthy children at that time, right? But we hardly ever hear about it, and it is more rare. But we should never feel locked into that diagnosis of infertility because 100% of the couples that I've worked with have had pieces of that puzzle, that assessment puzzle, that have been missing for them, even if they've been through multiple rounds of IVF.
Yep.
We go back in their records and their labs and their scans and their history. There have always been pieces of that puzzle that have never been assessed for them that are important to their fertility, both male and female. And that we can assess for that with relatively simple technology like blood work.
Yep.
Or just talking to the person and understanding the nuances of her cycle, for example. There's so much information available that's just at our fingertips. But like I say, I've never worked with a couple that's had all of that in front of me when we first start to work together. And when we assess that, we can actually develop a treatment plan that is individualized to that person and to what would fill in those and strengthen those pillars of fertility success for them, so that they can actually see transformation, literal transformation in their results.
I love what you're saying, because the first thing that I realized was fertility is a point in time. It's not a forever thing, right? So it's like if someone says, your doctor says you're struggling, or you have infertility as a diagnosis, that you need to put the word "at this moment" at the end of that sentence, right? At this moment. I love that. The second thing I think that is super important, and it's probably just a unfortunate side effect of the way our healthcare system works, which is when a woman's trying to conceive, she's working primarily, first of all, by herself and her partner, but then working with an OBGYN. And so when they hit a bump in the road, an OBGYN has so much knowledge, but certainly not a complete picture when it comes to any fertility challenges. But then the next step from that OBGYN is often a reproductive endocrinologist, right?
Yes.
And so that's like going from 0 to 60. And once you're in the hands of a reproductive endocrinologist, to their credit, I will say, it's all about getting you pregnant as fast as they can get you pregnant. And so they take the fastest line, which is like, let's run. So where your OBGYN is looking at certain labs, like, let's just make sure you're not starting menopause. Let's just make sure, they're doing basic. Then you get to a reproductive endocrinologist and they are foot on the gas. Like, we just need the labs that are going to tell us you can sustain a pregnancy and that there isn't anything blocking anything.
Correct.
And then it's all systems go, right? But what I love about what you're saying, because, functional medicine is near and dear to my heart, is that there's so much in the middle there.
Yeah. It's like a nest, right? It's like building a nest around a context for your fertility success. Yeah. And we need those specialists. We need those specialists and their care.
Absolutely.
And often we need the technology that they can offer, like IVF or even IUI. But to surround your fertility success with those features of health that naturally sustain fertility, whether you're going to use assisted reproduction or not, it's important, because we don't just want, like, I just don't want people to get pregnant. I want them to have a healthy baby at the end, right?
So that's so good.
Like healthy baby. And of course, when you go into a fertility cycle, like an IVF, for example, and maybe so many people have had multiple failed rounds, and it's so stressful. It's like, infertility has been shown to be as stressful as having a diagnosis of HIV or cancer or chronic pain.
Oh yeah.
And it's with even less social support around it.
Yeah.
And so when a couple, though, does some work and they can go into that next cycle as if it's a brand new cycle, as if they're feeling the best they've ever felt in their lives, I just anecdotally see that correlated with a much greater level of success. Because again, fertility is about health. It's a function of our health and well-being.
What an amazing I'm getting it now. And it's kind of odd that I'm 51 and now I'm getting what I wish I could have told my 31-year-old self. But I love how you're couching it, which is, and tell me if this is right, but if you're struggling or you're having issues with fertility, it's your body's way of saying something just isn't right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you talk about the goal being a healthy baby, it's, what can we do to make things right now, which is also synonymous with how do we lay the groundwork for a healthy baby, right?
That's right.
I would imagine it's one and the same. That's so cool.
It is. Yeah. It's amazing. Everything that we would do to facilitate fertility success happens to be an investment in a future child's health. The pregnancy health, of course, but also their future health through epigenetics, the influence of parents' health, and the literal changes in their DNA, and the DNA of eggs and sperm becomes the blueprint immediately on fertilization of that child's future health potential.
Absolutely.
So we want to lay that foundation as expertly as we can, because when you desire to have a child, you already feel that child part of you, already love that baby. So what could be a better way to love into their life than by being healthy yourself, so that you can not only conceive, but have a healthy pregnancy and give that child the greatest inheritance possible. This is a principle it didn't even really exist when I was a student in naturopathic medicine, epigenetics, but it certainly existed through the lens of traditional Chinese medicine, where traditionally, when a couple is intending to have a baby, they would designate a season of health for themselves before they conceive. Because when a baby, in traditional Chinese culture, when a baby is born, they're considered to be 1 year of age on the day of their birth, right?
Yes.
Because it's recognized that there's this season of preparation and health investment for both parents of 3 months or so, and then the 9 months of pregnancy, and that baby is already 1 year old.
Oh.
And physiologically, this could not be more true, because it takes 3 months for eggs, which we are born with, yes, but they are in a suspended animation state when we're born until about 3 months before they would be ovulated, or in a case of IVF cycle, retrieved to become embryos, to be used to become embryos. There's a significant amount of maturation that completes in that state. The eggs need a lot of energy, they grow, they need more nutrients, and they need more antioxidants. And the more that environment is nourished, on a microscopic level through our choices that we make on a macroscopic level, the better chances that that egg will be not only free from genetic abnormalities, but also will be contributing to a very healthy embryo and ultimately a healthy child.
Oh my gosh, this is mind-blowing. Okay. So and I mean that sincerely, like I had goosebumps while you were just talking, because a couple of things. Let's take a step back and talk about epigenetics, because I know we've talked about it on the show, but I'm not sure everyone catches every single episode. So epigenetics are the way your environment interacts with your genetics, right? So we've all talked about, there's pesticides on our strawberries, and there's our routers are on in our homes. And so it's the way our bodies interact with our environment. We've all heard stories of, the whole Aaron Brockovich story. That's epigenetics. Developing cancers based on your environment very often is because of epigenetics. And so I know people always think my genes are my destiny, but they're not. They have little switches, just like your light switch. And you turn them on and turn them off with the choices that you make. So I just want to set the stage for that. But if I understand you correctly, and honestly, when I was going through my challenges, I read everything. I was a hyper consumer, like most women are. Books, I was going to fix this and get to the bottom of it. And I have never, ever heard that eggs are, in a sense, in suspended animation until the cycle in which they're called upon, right? Even in vitro, they're still part of a cycle, and they go through that stage. So it's the health of the woman during that cycle when they come out of their kind of animation, their what's the good word for it, limbo, where they just kind of come out and start to mature and evolve, where you're saying at that point they need to have the right nutrients available to them. They need to have the right environment, not a hyper inflamed environment and things like that. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, and it's physiologically just a fact.
Yes, and no one's talking about it.
Yeah, I know. And it's actually miraculous to think about it. And it breaks open the old paradigm that are, it's true that our eggs are as old as we are, but that doesn't mean that they're bad, right? Or that, right?
Yes,
that they can't be really lit up by the environment that they're in, and the way that they are able to be nourished, especially in those three or so months before, because that's when the body starts to really recruit the follicles in advance. There's always a little class in Q.
Oh, yeah. I love it.
Yeah. So it's like, as you're nearing your graduation, you want to really end this well, right? So the body is going to choose the best follicles to recruit for the next upcoming cycles, and one of them becomes
valedictorian.
That's right.
That's exciting. So oh my gosh, I have to say, honestly, no one is having this conversation. I mean, we all know inherently, like, I want to live as healthy as I can while I'm trying to conceive, or, we always think once I'm pregnant, I'm going to start to live healthy, right? But I love what you're saying, that the class of, February
starts now
in November, right? Or whenever. But what hope? Because what that means is every 3 months, like every month, right? So if you start today at being super diligent about the health of your future eggs, then within 3 months, maybe even sooner, but within 3 months, you're really affecting the quality and then the future health of that egg, which becomes the future health of that embryo, which becomes the future health of that child, right? That's amazing.
Yes. And you're reminding me of one story that I put into my book, where I had a patient, and she was in her early 40s, and she had been basically dismissed from fertility care by her clinic, saying it's an egg quality issue, and really they kind of said, there's nothing we can do for you. And I was consulting with a different reproductive endocrinologist at a different clinic who, in that particular clinic in Toronto, is very evidence-based. They're very integrative-minded. They have naturopaths and acupuncturists right integrated into their program. And I got him on the phone and we were talking about this. And I said, is this a person that I could refer to your clinic for a second opinion, basically? And he said, there's nothing we can do for egg quality, but you can.
Right.
And I just thought, well, everything we could do for egg quality, you could all do too, but it's just not necessarily within their scope or their standards or their procedures to think about that way. But they, more and more so, at least in the region that I practice, reproductive endocrinology and fertility clinics in particular, among all the specialists, are the most integrative minded that I've ever noticed in my entire 10 years practicing naturopathic medicine, because this stuff works and there's so many studies. And of course, fertility is about being as healthy as, it's just intuitive. Right. Of course, fertility is about our health. And of course, women think, well, I want to be healthy so I can get pregnant, but they're never, hardly ever, like you said, we're not having the conversations often enough about how clear it is that that is an ingredient, an essential ingredient in their fertility, as important as getting that egg and sperm together for some kind of dance. It's just as important as the context, the stage that we're creating for that conception, and that healthy child starts T-minus 3 months before conception.
Yeah.
Right? And it does continue. And I think it's easy for women to think, oh, now that I'm pregnant, I'm going to be super healthy. But the message of epigenetics tells us that there are processes and influences that are positive that we can put onto our fertility success and future baby's health, that we can start now, anytime. As long as we think we might ever want to have a child, this is the most important. From a public health perspective, this is the most important population to be investing in, is women and couples before they conceive, because it's changing future generations. Yes.
Absolutely. That's exactly right, because the DNA that you're born with is the DNA that was at your conception. Right?
And when
it makes complete sense.
When you think about it too, as women, as females, when our mothers were fetuses in utero inside our grandmother's womb, our mothers, by the time they were 6 or 8 weeks fetal gestational age, already had in them, in their reproductive system, developing their future eggs that would become 50% of our genes. So 50% of our DNA was immersed in our grandmother's body's environment.
Oh my God, I have goosebumps everywhere. It's so crazy.
Yeah, so one of my teachers said, in the context of helping us as practitioners to treat and manage people with chronic disease, is he's like, back up here. We can eliminate chronic disease potential from our population if we invest in people before they get pregnant. He said, because what your grandmother did in Vegas didn't stay in Vegas.
I love that.
So he's focusing on the negative influences that our grandmothers might have struggled with, but we also have equal potential to invest positively with our nutrition, with our thoughts, with our movement, with our clean air and water, with targeted supplements, with botanicals or acupuncture or energetic medicine, or all these modalities that make you feel good. You feel good with them because you're getting healthier. And that's such a great side effect of taking care of yourself in this functional or holistic way in advance.
That is so crazy, but so true. It's amazing. This is a message that's I feel like it's one of those Back to the Future moments. It's coming from the future. How have we not had this conversation? Mm-hmm. It was never addressed, and man, now that we know what we know about epigenetics, and sure, we've all heard the egg that became you was in your grandmother. We've heard that, but not until we started to put the full story together. Like, if your grandmother was a type 1 diabetic and had this other health, challenge, that weaves its way
Mhm.
your into your DNA and into your eggs, right?
Yeah.
And so that's phenomenal.
And the powerful thing too is for women today, we have a lot more choices and freedoms than even our grandmothers did. Meaning, even though, or even if our grandmothers lived stressful lives or were smokers or
Right.
went through hard times, women, people have always been under periods of time of adversity. Absolutely. And the powerful thing is we have the tools today and the information to know that relatively easy with like just choices that we have available to us through food and supplements and things like that is, thank goodness for our privilege to be able to have those choices. But we can interrupt those cycles as well. So we don't need to assume that we're going to perpetuate everything. And just like genes, the genetic code that we have is not our destiny, nor is our previous ancestors' epigenetics,
right?
Because we can also change that within our own lifetime, and for our eggs and or sperm for our male, for the dads.
I love that, and you call that renewal genes. I love that term because I've never heard that used before, certainly not in the space of fertility. It's funny. I always my father had diabetes and he passed away from lung cancer. My mother had heart disease. She had 2 heart attacks. Her first was when she was young, 50, 55 maybe. And whenever I go into, I establish with a new clinician, one of the first questions is, does anyone in your family have heart disease, diabetes, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yes. But that doesn't matter.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Right. And so this is the antithesis of that frustration, right? Because it matters to a certain sense, but it really is an old paradigm of that,
Yeah.
And so I love this.
Yeah, it's the old paradigm of assuming that decade by decade we get sicker and sicker, or there's another layer of chronic disease added, or another requirement for a whole bunch of new prescriptions and things like that. And that is old news. We can get healthier as we age chronologically, and just like when you have a girlfriend and she's gone on vacation, or she's finally out of a bad relationship, and you see her a little while later and you're like, wow, you look 10 years younger.
Yes.
Right? And she's not 10 years younger, obviously, but something is reflecting from her cellular level outward that there has been transformation and renewal, because all of our cells, except for our eggs, all of our cells are programmed to die and have been replaced. Genetic code is opened up and copied. A new cell is replaced. Even from our bone, like every cell does this, except our eggs. And so, but all of the cells that are housing our eggs do that too. Ovaries, our ovary tissue, right? And that's under hormonal stimulation. It's under nutrition stimulation. It's under oxidative stress if we're not balancing that oxidative or the anti-aging components of food and supplements and lifestyle. So there's so many factors that are within our control, which are amazing. And it's just a matter of putting together the pieces of that puzzle that are right for you as an individual.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what it reminds me of? It's not unusual to meet people whose parents are quite older, and I've had many friends like that, and they say, well, my mother was 42 when she had me, or my grandmother was 45 when she had my mom. And there are more stories like that in people's families than are now, right?
Yeah.
And that was just the natural process of fertility. And, the air was cleaner, the food was cleaner. they cooked at home every night, like going out was
Yes.
a rare treat. So, the use of sugar was not so widespread, and processed foods didn't, canned food was the newest thing.
Yes,
So,
that's right. In the
really
50s or
amazing.
so. Yeah. And even then, the canned food would have been of potentially higher quality and less
Fresh. Yeah.
chemical contamination or less preservatives and things like that too. I know. So
Yeah.
it really is cool if you have that in your history to listen to those stories and let those become, part of your ancestry, part of your heritage, and
Yeah.
let go of the ones that are all about chronic disease or whatever. And I had the same. I had my paternal grandmother had her fifth child, my aunt, when she was 40. And on my mother's side, her grandmother had a sister who was 20 years younger, right? Which means
Yes.
that their mother
Right.
had at least a 20-year reproductive lifespan.
Yes.
And I was never sure of her actual age, but I was like, well, 20 years, we're banking on some being close to 40, if not over 40, with that
Correct.
conception.
Yeah.
So I just listened to those stories and I was like, yeah, I can do that too. So when I allowed those stories to embed in my belief about myself and my own fertility, it took away the fear for me and the pressure and struggle. And we haven't shared this with your audience till up to this moment, but I am expecting our first child, and I will be 40 when my baby is born.
Yeah.
And the baby is very healthy, and I feel really well, other than morning sickness. And I don't feel like there's this arbitrary barrier between 39 and 40 or 40 and 42 or whatever the arbitrary, it used to be 35 or it used to be even 30.
Yeah,
right?
every textbook has this like jump off the cliff moment. And it's somewhere between 30 and 35.
Yes. And you are not a statistic, right? Like the population dynamics, and there's even questions about the validity of those population-based studies. And it used to be that fertility clinics would even kind of stop your fertility care when you were 35. And then it became 40. And now in our region, it's 43, where at least, so in our area, Ontario, one cycle is paid for by the government healthcare system.
That's great. Mm-hmm.
That's fairly new.
Yeah,
but the woman has to be 43 or under to start that cycle. So it is still a little bit arbitrary, but when you hear stories about people conceiving when they are in their 40s, whether it was planned or unplanned, you get that level of, wow, of course it's possible. We're only talking about one healthy egg and one healthy sperm.
Right.
And
in a healthy body.
Yeah. And it takes about a season to adjust for that, depending on the person's, how they've taken care of themselves up until that point.
Yeah.
But there's no reason to assume that any particular age is off limits while you're still having cycles.
Yeah. That's amazing. And so real quick, what are your 9 pillars? Because you've mentioned there are 9 pillars that are the foundation of fertility.
Yeah. So the first thing that we do is assessment, because as I mentioned earlier, assessment is rarely, if ever, complete in our view and comprehensive. So we do that. We look at nutrition, detoxification, movement, heart set, mindset, the relationship between two, because this does take two, unless you're, of course, single, but then we're focusing on relationship with yourself or your beliefs about yourself. And we finally get through those and we come to treatment. Because it's only until those are all assessed and kind of we've laid that groundwork, then we choose the few specific treatments, interventions. So maybe it's bioidentical progesterone, maybe it's herbal medicine, maybe it's an acupuncture course or some kind of combination, and or IVF or IUI or prescription medications through the fertility clinic. But we want to get those pillars on board first, because it can eliminate so much of the symptoms or the inflammation or the autoimmune components or the limiting self-beliefs that do change. We know our beliefs change our cellular physiology too.
Yes.
And we want to see that woman or man has the highest health potential, that their genes, we want their genetic potential to shine through, right? So like you mentioned, those switches, as if a light switch, we want to have the right ones dimmed and the right ones bright. And then we can assume that the treatment course will be just so much more clear as to what would help them. Yes. And yeah, exactly. Right. Setting up for success.
It's almost like it's not confounded by all these other problems. Like you wouldn't build a house on, sticks and little rickety pieces of old wood. You build a house on a solid foundation, and then you can go as high as you need to go when the foundation is solid, right? So it's the same idea. I love it. And I really, gosh, if this message could touch people, whether this is you, whether this is your daughter, whether this is your granddaughter, it doesn't matter. This message is such a powerful one. And honestly, I promise you, they have not heard this. This is not something that is in the mainstream conversation about fertility. Yet, it's probably the most important linchpin in the whole process. So I honestly, meeting you has been amazing, because I just feel like your mission is changing the lives of families in the future, now and generations to come. It's
Thank you, Michelle.
Big, powerful message.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for helping me share the message.
Yeah, absolutely. And so please, even if this is not your story right now, this is the story of someone you know. I promise you.
Absolutely.
If it's a friend, the daughter of a friend, the granddaughter of a friend, your daughter, your granddaughter, this is a message that someone needs to hear.
Yeah.
And so here's the really cool thing. If you go to evolvingageless.com and in our show notes with Dr. Liz, you will be able to download a bunch of stuff. So one, Dr. Liz's book, the IVF Meal Plan. So for anyone going through in vitro fertilization, it's a must. But honestly, anyone who's on this fertility improvement journey will benefit from this book, because if it's good enough for IVF, it's good enough for step one, miles behind IVF. So that book is there. Dr. Liz is giving every one of our listeners a 10% discount on anything on the site, and you will get the link right on Evolving Ageless. But also here, to me, this is an amazing gift, especially for someone who's pregnant and busy. But Dr. Liz, for anyone who's struggling right now, is offering a free call, a phone call, to actually talk through your options. And so whether that's a conception confidence call, she calls it, or whether or not this is this feminine leadership, how are you called to emerge in this next act of your life, right? But what a wonderful gift you have. And all of that is available on evolvingageless.com, and just go to the show right now with Dr. Liz, and you're here now, actually, if you're watching. So it'll be right in the show notes below. And I just can't thank you enough. This is an amazing gift that you've just shared with the audience, and one that doesn't just help people today, but like I said, it will help generations to come. It's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for renewing the hope that people have, because I know on that journey, losing hope is probably one of the first things that happens. And so I honor what you're doing, and congratulations. We're so excited for you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. So as we keep continuing our work of changing our trajectory just a little bit day by day, making whatever changes we can in our lives so that we can ultimately evolve ageless, I welcome you to go back and watch any of these previous podcasts. I'm here every week, same time. So I will catch you next week with an equally exciting and informative, with a wonderful guest, no doubt. look forward to helping you live ageless. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.